What are the best manga in Weekly Shonen Jump? Here to help me answer that question is the one, the only, Manga Crash. Crash, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, Mr. Ouji. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for asking. So, here's what we're gonna do. Should be pretty obvious, but we are gonna take all of the manga that are currently in Weekly Shonen Jump, so no Jump Plus, no Jump Giga, just Weekly Shonen Jump, and we're gonna rank them. These are the manga that are either must read, the manga that are gonna put you to sleep, and everything else in between. The first tier is going to be must read. I'll start at the bottom. I have Mission Yozakura Family, then Undead Unluck, and finally, one that should come to no surprise, Akane Banashi. Crash, what do you have?
Well, I have at the bottom, I have Undead Unluck. I have My Hero Academia, then Sakamoto Days, Mission Yozakura Family, and One Piece. So I have a couple more than you, 2 more than you.
So let me ask you this. What are your thoughts on My Hero? Because I am in this camp of a lot of people where I think it's kind of touch and go right now. So what has you putting it in must read?
Yeah, I think most people probably, from what I've seen, they don't like it too much, where the manga is going. But I personally, I've always been like since the second half of the manga, I feel like it's getting better and better. And it's touching topics that I got engaged. There was the reason that I liked My Hero Academia, like the morality between the villains and the heroes, and the entire thing with Spinner recently, the newer chapters as well. I thought it was pretty interesting. I think the manga, because I was afraid the manga wouldn't touch these topics as well as I hoped it would, but I definitely think it does, and it's been a very fun final arc for me. I think it can get better, and by all means it can also start dripping in quality for me as well by the end, but as it stands, I think it's definitely a really great final arc, and just because of that, I think it is a must read right now. If you enjoyed My Hero Academia up to this point, you should be reading the manga.
I definitely have to agree in that sense. For me, it's just the inconsistency. Like, you'll have a batch of chapters that's really good, that's really hype, and then you'll have a batch of chapters that's like, why are we doing this? I don't care. Or it's like a cool idea, but you're also just like, okay, why did he do it like that? Now, in that same line of thought, that's also why I don't have One Piece in must read. I feel like it's less, specifically with the Egghead Island stuff, it's less inconsistent than My Hero, but to that same thought, like, you'll have some chapters where the paneling is like all over the place, but I will admit the Egghead Island stuff has been really good. So what made you place it in the must read versus hype?
Essentially the Egghead, I think, and this has a lot to do with the fact that I've been reading One Piece since 2008. So a lot of the reveals, a lot of things that I'm learning now, I'm kind of like, oh, I've been waiting like 13 years to learn this. Like, I don't remember if the Gear 5, I would think it was still this year, but even like things like that, the final moments of Wano were really amazing. I think since then, the manga has been on a all-time high. We are clearly like reaching the end of the manga, as the same case with My Hero Academia, and maybe not for someone who starts reading One Piece right now, but definitely for long-time readers.
Yeah, I think that's my other thing, is like, if you are a One Piece fan, then yeah, this arc is a must read. But when I think of like just someone who isn't necessarily like a hardcore One Piece fan, like they read it, but it's not like their whole world, or it's not necessarily in their top 3, there's a lot of other stuff in Jump right now where I'm like, if you didn't read it this week, it wasn't a big deal. So that's personally what kept it out of this tier. Now, why don't you talk about Sakamoto Days real quick, because we both agree on Mission Yozakura Family is definitely a must read. Great story, great characters. It does like the whole family dynamic in manga definitely better than most manga, and it also has what a lot of people are arguing, rightfully so, one of the best current villains. And then you have Undead Unluck, which is also really good right now. It fixed the pacing issue. It's got Fuko, who is just a badass right now. So I don't really think we need to talk too much more about those, but why don't you sell me on Sakamoto Days, because I have Sakamoto Days in hype tier. Why do you think it is must read right now?
Well, that's just because I think Sakamoto Days is one of the best manga in Jump right now. I think just in terms of like consistency, it's not really in terms of like, oh, right now it's one of the best arcs, like is the Kids with Undead or Yozakura or One Piece. It's just a manga that is consistently really, really fun. And it's not in one of its best arcs because all of the arcs are the best arc. They're all really, really amazing. The fights are my favorite fights in Battle Shonen so far. The movement is amazing. The characters are really fun. Everything about Sakamoto Days is really enjoyable to read. So I think it is a must-read all times.
You know, I can't really disagree with anything you just said. So before we move on, I have to say my piece about Akane Banashi. If you guys are followers of the channel, you saw my last video, why I think it was the best manga of 2022. I'm not gonna spend too much time saying stuff I've already said. I think it's the most visually expressive manga I've ever read, not just in Jump. It's hilarious, it's emotional, and it's intense. But that's really my piece on Akane Banashi. Is there anything you want to say on it before we move to the next tier?
No, I agree pretty much everything you said. I have a reason to not put it must read, but we'll get into it in the next tier.
All right, perfect. So the next tier is, of course, the hype tier. So why don't you start it off this time?
Okay, from top to bottom, I have Akane Banashi, Blue Box, Witch Watch, Black Clover, and The Elusive Samurai.
Okay, so you gave a lot more credit to some of my series. So we won't talk too much about Witch Watch then, because we seem like we agree. Witch Watch, I will say, if you love Gintama, if you love comedies, you need to read Witch Watch. It is just so good. The characters are great. The premise is interesting. The art is gorgeous. And again, if you're a fan of Gintama, it will have those serious type arcs that are really hype. The only reason I couldn't put it in must read is because the comedy chapters will be kind of hit or miss sometimes. So if it was just a little more consistent, I would have put it in must read, but that's why I put it in the top of hype tier. The other pick, so here's my picks. I have Witch Watch at the top, then One Piece, then Sakamoto Days, and then I have 6P or PPP, or Piana Isimo, however you say it.
Yeah, horrible name.
Yeah, not very catchy. I won't say too much on this series. It's very interesting. It's a lot like Akane Banashi in the sense of it highlights an art form really well, especially for people that know nothing about it. Like for me, I don't play instruments. I am very musically illiterate. However, it does a great job of illustrating the experience of the art form. And then another thing I like is the art itself. It reminds me a lot of Demon Slayer. But, okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. I want you are the sole delegate for Blue Box. I want you to justify why it deserves the hype tier.
Well, I think it's probably one of the best rom-coms in Jump. And I don't want to say I've read all rom-coms in Jump from the past like 15 years, but I probably read most of rom-coms in Jump over the past 15 years. And Blue Box, I don't think it's the best one because Ichigo 100% is still, for me, it's still the best one, but it is really, really good.
All right. So I think we're good on hype tier then. I think the only other thing I am really excited that you put it in hype tier was The Elusive Samurai. I don't think that gets nearly enough credit.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest, I think Elusive Samurai is actually the worst manga from this mangaka, but that just proves how good he is, because even Elusive Samurai is really, really good. I think there's some places where it can be a little bit of a drag to read here and there. That's why it's on the bottom of hype and not really on top or on must read, but overall it's a really great manga. And Akane Banashi, I didn't put it on must read because I think it needs to get better, or not that needs, it's going to get better. I think it's still very much in the early phases, and I think in 2-3 years from now, that's when we're gonna see a Kanebanashi at its top, and that's when it's gonna be a must-read. At least that's what I'm hoping for.
Ladies, gentlemen, everyone else, make sure to quote this man, because he is speaking the gospel right now. He is speaking the truth. He is speaking the Lord's word. Quote him, because it is going to happen. You heard it here first. Now, let's go ahead and move into the relevant tier. I'll start first. Again, quote me on this, because this will most likely be the end of my career. I'll start from bottom up. I have Ginka and Gluna, if I said that right. Then Ruri Dragon. Then Hunter x Hunter, My Hero, Black Clover, Elusive Samurai, JJK, and then me and Roboco. But Crash, what about you?
That's why you brought me, to bring the dislike bar even further. So unrelevant, I have on the bottom, I have Mashal, then I have High School Family, then I have Cypher Academy, PPP, me and Roboco, and then I have Ichino's Family, which I struggle a lot into where it was going to be in this tier list.
Yeah, that is definitely an interesting ranking. So let me say this first. I was struggling with Mashal about whether to put it at the bottom of relevant or the top of sleep. This one kind of changes for me chapter to chapter. Like, if this was a month ago, 2 months ago, it probably would have been in the relevant tier. But I think the problem with Mashal for me, it's just one of those series where, like, it's so over the top and it has so many fights where it just loses the intensity for me. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I like all of the characters, but I just feel like lately it's a lot of the same. However, this could change quickly for me, depending on where this fight goes. But go ahead and talk.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
so why don't you say your piece on Mashal?
It's different for me because it's the exact opposite for me, because I was like, if you asked me a couple months ago to put it on sleep tier, but the recent chapters, I decided to put it on relevant because I've been enjoying the recent chapters, the new, not the new characters, but the fights with the sidecast. I never liked too much of the sidecast, I'm gonna be honest, other than one character or the other. But I've been enjoying the fights, which is something that I never enjoyed in Mashal. So this is the first time in Mashal history that the manga is actually interesting me beside that main premise, that main joke of it.
Yeah, no, I definitely see where you're coming from. It's just, for me, it falls in that family of like One Piece, My Hero, Black Clover, like it's just a lot of the same. But go ahead and talk to your placement of Roboco and Ichinose family, because I mean, for whatever reason, I mean, it's no surprise. It's not like you did it on accident, but you have somewhat become the face of Roboco in the community, and yet you ranked Ichinose above it. So can you talk to that a bit?
Yeah, I really like the mystery and how different Ichinose is within Shonen Jump. I put Ichinose when I first made the tier list, and then I changed things a little bit. When I first made it, I actually put on must read, and then I was like reviewing the last chapter. The last chapter was really, really weird. Was kind of strange. But then I saw like a discussion people were having on my Discord where they were really trashing it. I was kind of like rethinking about everything. I was like, you know what? I think like the first 2 chapters of it were really, really good. The last 2 chapters aren't as good. I don't want to say they're bad. Again, I think that the last chapter is just really weirdly structured.
I think that is a very fair assessment. It's just, for me, right, there's that uncertainty. So that's why I probably would have put it in relevant, because I'm definitely not sleeping on it, not at all. But for me, I'm waiting for a little more certainty. So we're pretty much in agreement, but I think it deserves talking about just for a quick minute about why Roboco shouldn't be slept on and why it's actually good. So I'll say my piece because I'm fairly new to it. Like, I really only started reading it recently. My thing was like the humor. I saw people saying like, oh, the humor's not that good. It's just like kind of like Family Guy where all they do is reference stuff. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to read that then. But this manga is really funny. Like, it is so funny. Like, you go into it and it seems really dumb, but like, I knew this was going to be funny when in the first chapter the main character, Bondo, was like, oh, I forget what he said specifically, but he's like, oh, I want a maid. And the mom was like, well, if you want a sister, I guess I can work a little harder with your father. And I was like, oh my God, no. And from then on, it's been hilarious. I love all the characters. I didn't like the side characters at first, and they really do grow on you. So just real quick, why don't you say your piece? I think we generally agree, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think I find it funny because you mentioned Family Guy, and I hate Family Guy. But a lot of people also say that the manga is just references. And sure, at face value, there's a lot of like references to other manga, and that's where I'll say like 60 to 70% of the humor comes from. But the actual, like, the fun thing, the reason why you're gonna enjoy Roboko isn't necessarily because of the references to other manga, but because of the characters. I really do think the characters are wonderful. Bondo, Gachigorilla, Matsuo, and of course Roboko. I think those four are so fun to see, and they're adorable. Especially as someone who has, and I don't think you need to, but as someone who grew up with Doraemon, which the main characters are literally ripped off of Doraemon. So that's one of the reasons where it kind of got into it. But I don't think you need to like Doraemon or have grown up with Doraemon to enjoy Roboko, because the characters are fun even if you don't have that context. They just have a lot of art. And I think if you love manga, I think Roboko loves manga so much that it can grow on you.
All right, now is the heartbreak. We have to talk about the sleep tier. So I went first last time. Crash, why don't you start?
Okay, so from top to bottom, so from least sleep to more sleep, I have Tokyo Demon Bride Story, Jujutsu Kaisen, Ichigaki, which is the new gag manga, and Ginka and Gluma.
Okay, so for mine, I already said Mashal, that's what I have at the top, then Blue Box, then High School Family, and then Tokyo Demon Bride. So let me talk about Blue Box. So like I said, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think it's a good romance. However, the thing for me is, and this is a bit pretentious of me to say considering I don't read a lot of romance, but out of the ones I have read, and they're more rom-coms, but still, like if you compare this, and you could argue this is maybe an unfair comparison, when you compare this to something like Kaguya-sama, right? Kaguya-sama is even goofier and even more comedic, and yet I feel like the romantic tension is way better in that series. Whereas with Blue Box, and this is where I have to say, again, I'm only like 30-ish chapters in, to me it feels like it kind of just drags on and it leans on this whole like will they, won't they thing. And also, if I'm being honest, I think the characters are kind of boring. Like, I think the most interesting character is the best friend, the gymnastics character. Other than that, I think the main character is kind of boring, and I think the main love interest is boring.
I think that's fair. I haven't read Kaguya-sama to compare. And to be fair, Blue Box isn't unique in that regard. I think it does things really well, but it's not unique.
Yeah, that's kind of why I have it in sleep tier. It's like, it's not bad, but I don't know. I feel like it doesn't really stand out for me. All right, I feel like we're pretty good on sleep tier then. So finally, let's go to the I don't know tier. So in order, from top to bottom, I have Fabricant 100, Ichinose Family, Cypher Academy, and then Ichigogi. So Crash, what about you? What do you have?
I have Fabricant 100, Ruri Dragon, and then Hunter x Hunter, because I haven't read Hunter x Hunter.
Right, so let me talk about the new batch, because I haven't really said too much about the new batch. So, to be fair, right, Fabricant 100 has only had one chapter. However, I think it had the second best first chapter out of this new batch. I think the premise is unique, but not so weird that I don't get what's happening. Then you have Ichinose Family, which I think had the best first chapter out of this batch, but I think it is quickly like spiraling into this huge thing where like it had a premise that was clear, that was unique, but now I'm kind of just like, what does this story want to be? And it's not that I don't follow it, but it's kind of losing me. Cypher Academy, I can't say it's bad, but the only thing I will say is I find myself skimming these chapters a lot. And it is very text heavy. I think the premise is unique, but it's kind of out there, and also I slightly don't care. Like just the way the chapters work, where it's like, here's a puzzle, and it's like just the character solving the puzzle to themselves almost. Like it's not really like Dr. Stone, where it like breaks down the puzzle, which it kind of does, but also doesn't. And then also we have Ichigoki, which I just don't like.
No, I agree. And about Cypher Academy, I think one of the bigger problems also to us that the puzzles are very like Japanese based. So even if they explain it, it's not interesting. I think the story and the characters so far are a little bit interesting, but it kind of ruins it.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty good on the tiers then. I don't really feel like I disagree with anything you have ordered. So Crash, I just want to say real quick, thank you so much for doing this with me. I had a ton of fun.
Thank you for having me.
Is there any last thoughts you want to say to everyone?
No, I think just read Jump, have fun. That's all.
I could not have said it better myself. Guys, if you're not subscribed to Manga Crash, go do it. He does a ton of great videos. He has been covering the new batches of manga, so if you want to know which manga you can skip, which ones are the ones you should keep an eye on, and also just great manga content in general, make sure to go subscribe right now. But thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you found this video enjoyable. If you did, make sure to like the video. But until then, thank you so much for listening, and the both of us hope to hear from you soon.